school.
CMS believes that at a certain moment in human history, education must also act as a powerful instrument of profound social transformation, and that moment has now arrived.
Really feel that we will have some outcomes from the deliberations that we will have over the next few days, which will give a great message to the rest of the world about the significance and seriousness of this very important subject that you're going to deliberate on.
It is with this background that school has been holding annual international conferences of Chief Justices of the world. We believe that the judges, with their commitment to justice, impartiality, and regard to universal values and law, are highly esteemed and trusted by all sections of society, and therefore their well-considered, impartial views in the matter will have a high impact.
सर आपको लिंक भेज दिया मैंने YouTube का.
The theme for the 21st International Conference of the Chief Justices of the World, which is organized virtually by City Montessori School on global governance, a post-COVID imperative, will hopefully seek to prepare a roadmap for the world's leadership.
Over 100,000 people stood up and signed an appeal for CMS students, as Dr. Gandhi wrote to Dr. Kofi Annan, the then Secretary General of United Nations, on September the 1st, 1999. Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, borrowing from Ian Tinbergen, the Nobel laureate, emphasized upon the urgent need for a world government, pointing out the importance of arbitration to solve international disputes as enshrined in Article 51 of the Constitution of India. October 24th saw Dr. Kofi Annan respond to Dr. Gandhi, suggesting to take the matter forward with the world leaders. When the vision of an educationist encompasses learning beyond material and human, crossing into the realms of divine, colossal structures come up for the society to witness, applaud, and learn from. Clock back to year 2000 and we see a spiritually motivated, avid educationist, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, founder-manager of City Montessori School, while attending the UN Millennium Forum, along with 2,000 NGOs, proposed the inclusion of the clause for a new international economic and political world order on democratic lines in the UN Millennium Summit agenda, which was unanimously approved. Annihilated Dr. Gandhi as the self-proclaimed custodian of world's children, then decided on behalf of CMS students to reach out to the heads of participating states seeking support for his agenda at the Millennium Summit. This was pertinent to ensure for the child populace born and yet to be born their right to a safe future. CMS received letters of support from many world leaders, including the Prime Ministers of India, Australia, New Zealand, the President of Slovakia, and leaders of some other countries. It didn't cut much ice at the summit, however. Not someone to lose heart, Dr. Gandhi, guided by his divine orientation, working in true spirit of service to ensure global peace and prosperity, pinned his hopes on the judiciary and convened a roundtable conference on 14th January 2001. Encouraged by the support of the judicial fraternity, Dr. Gandhi then convened a national-level seminar on 25th February 2001. This was inaugurated by Honorable Mr. Justice R.S. Pathak, a former Chief Justice of India, former Judge, International Court of Justice, Member, Permanent Court of Arbitration, The Hague, and Honorary Member of the Bench, Grays in London. Many other distinguished judges also participated. This led to the first international conference on Article 51 of the Constitution of India, held on 6th May 2001. The conference was inaugurated by Honorable Mr. Justice K.T. Thomas, Judge, Supreme Court of India. Many other eminent judges and legal luminaries also participated. This further sped up the movement for compelling sovereignties to give
A very good evening and Jai Jagat from India to all our distinguished participants for this who are here for this session between 5:30 and 7:30. I request our respected founder director, the mother of our institution, Dr. Mrs. Bharati Gandhi, to please open the session with her welcome address. Thank you, Badi Didi. Didi, you have to unmute yourself.
Recording in progress.
Muted.
Jai Jagat. Friends, it's my proud privilege and honor to welcome Mr. Alan Ware, founder and global coordinator, Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, PNND, Switzerland. His Excellency Mr. Stefan Mesic, former President of Croatia, Honorable Madam Justice Concita Grillo, Court of Reggio, Italy, Honorable Justice Dr. Fernando E. Leon Quinday, Judge, Provincial Court of Justice, Ecuador, Honorable Madam Justice Rosa Maria Aconangi, Judge, Criminal Court of Appeal, Costa Rica, Honorable Justice Halima Sadulkar, Judge, Supreme Court of Appeal, South Africa, His Excellency Pakalitha B. Mosisli, former Prime Minister of Lesotho, Honorable Mr. Justice Karl Ashok Singh, former Chancellor of the Judiciary, Guyana, His Excellency Mr. Justice Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, 5th President of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Carmen Balhastorio, founder Pax Universal Brazil. How happy we are today. I am also indeed grateful to all the prominent members of the world leadership, judiciary, and prominent peace organizations from 27 countries who are taking part in this conference. The theme of this conference, justice, peace, security, and well-being of the world during the pandemic, is more timely and relevant. I am sure that its fruitful deliberations will help and contribute a lot to build global public opinion for the formation of World Court of Justice, World Parliament, and World Government. Since the year of its establishment in 1959, the vision CMS is to make every child potentially light of the world by making them spiritually aware, implanting in their tender hearts the love of God, the ideas of world unity and world peace, based on the ancient Indian philosophy known as in Sanskrit Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That is, the earth is but one country and mankind its citizen. Therefore, the motto CMS is Jai Jagat. That means do good to the world, whole world, or victory to the world, which was coined by Mahatma Gandhi. Consequently, CMS strives to teach every student the lofty ideals of the oneness of God, unity of humankind, universal brotherhood, world unity, world peace, in addition to the teaching of the prescribed school syllabi. On this day, a World Day of International Justice, celebrated across the globe on this 17th July, I would like to quote the excerpt of the speech of Honorable Mr. Justice P. N. Bhagwati. He was former Chief Justice of India and former Chairman of United Nations Human Rights Commission, Geneva. While attending the 6th International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in the year 2005, he said, quote, "Let me tell my brother judges, the hands of a great judge are not tied. Throughout my career, I have never felt once that my hands were tied. You can always find ways and means if you are creative, imaginative, and if you have a public interest at heart. Therefore, resolve to yourself that you are working for justice for not only those who come before you in the court or can come before you, but justice for everyone, for the common man. Dr. Nelson Mandela has said that the education is the most powerful weapon that can be used to change the world. Therefore, justice, peace, security, and well-being of the world during the pandemic can only be achieved if we educate the masses so that everyone has the basic fundamental rights like bread, clothing, shelter, health, and education in order to survive on this planet. Honorable Madam Justice Gracilla Dixon, former Chief Justice of Panama, while attending the 7th International Conference of the Chief Justices of the World in 2006, had also expressed that we, the judges, can change the realities. So now the time has come that we all have to change the realities of the world, which are a great threat for survival of humanity. Once again, please accept my sincere thanks for taking out your most precious time to attend and blessing us with your inspiring presence. Before I say Jai Jagat, I would like to take a little time that if you believe in the Almighty God, He is just. He will not tolerate the indiscipline which has been demonstrated by many of us by not curbing our behavior in the light of environment. We are having all the facilities at the cost of the ruin. Melting of the glaciers, warming up, and what not. So as the hands of the judges are not tied, in the same way, the hands of God are not tied. He is almighty, all-powerful. He can change anything as he wishes. So, we are all followers of great manifestations of God like Christ, Moses, Zoroaster, and Muhammad, and Baha'u'llah. Why not? We go to them and take their teachings, follow their teachings as do unto the other. This is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like to be done unto you. My dear friends, I am not a preacher, but I wanted to take your time. Sorry for that. Now I would like you to let me have your very precious viewpoint. Thank you very much. Welcome to all.
Thank you very much, Badi Didi, for your wonderful welcome address for the closing session of the conference today, the 17th of July, the International Day, World Day for International Justice. I would now like to welcome our first speaker for this session, Honorable Ms. Justice Concetta Grillo, Court of Reggio, Italy. She has been attending our conference. Personally, she attended this conference in the year 2015, where thereafter she attended the online conference last year in 2020. Honorable Ms. Justice Concetta Grillo. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You listen me? You listen me? You hear?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I thanks from Sandeep Srivastrana and the whole organization for this invitation. I'm an honorary judge at the Criminal Court of Reggio Calabria in the south of Italy and a criminologist. I deal with training by teaching criminology in various courses, at the experience gained over the years give me an opportunity to talk about the potential of women in the justice sector in Italy, and above all the impact that the pandemic has had on our work. As the first statistic, the distribution according to gender shows the prevalence of the number of women. In my opinion, this places women, at least for what concerns the superior role of magistrate, at level also in relation to the sensitivity that women have in administering justice. I realize to be on file every day that in case of maltreatment, stalking, or sexual violence, that the gap is still hug, and the strange painting in this area has not yet been activities, because the woman is always a victim. Home violence can lead to various cases, which can be on an economic, psychological, physical nature, and so on. But in the most cases, at last, as far as the murder are concerned, they are always the perpetration who are the husband, the boyfriends, the partner, and so on. In a still hypothesis, the overbearing attempt to regain a vacillating role is carried out with the aim of affirming in an unequivocal way the position of male dominance of the intersex relationship. The violence of which a woman is subject in the context of the home constitutes a reality, centrally imposing, but whose dimension still elude as to date. According to the FBA, it is the least reported crime in the United States for which the obscure number for that type of other crime is more likely than for any crime. We talk about criminology as an iceberg where crime can be defeated, only the rest is immersed and never known. Domestic violence, the one that occurs through psychological harassment, is certainly the most devastating. The woman stripped of any dimension of a human being and managed by the so-called moral serial killer. That is, those who come to the home which has a supremacy as created personality, and the point that in cases of rebellion, the just punishment for the moral serial killer is murder. The potential of woman is our country is centrally greater than other. Dealing a bit criminology with about all with criminology research, I have participated in numerous international conferences, for example in Arab countries, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, and also in India. The pandemic emergency has also profoundly affected family structure, in which the role of women as the main caregiver is consolidated and the risk of abandonment for increases. A frequent result of family chores in which the man, a culturally heavy breadwinner and with the average income higher, he returns more and before the woman to work outside the home. It is a real economic problem for a whole country that takes the luxury of living half on its production force ensemble, which regard in particular to gender equality. Particular attention will be paid to family empowerment in terms of training, employability, and self-employment, and also with the project aimed to permission the reintegration into the world of work of fragile category and family entrepreneurial skills. In all the world, there is a women's association can use a moment of effective empowerment for women in the labor market in order to destroy and eliminate the gender gap once and for all, so as not to hear more about gender discrimination at their shoulder on 20 and 21, an utopia perhaps, but I believe in it, and I have always believed in it is, and maybe one day our daughters, or perhaps better, the granddaughters, will be able to access the world of work to enhance it with the great resource that women always have, and that is her resilience. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank Honorable Ms. Justice Concetta Grillo, the Court of Reggio from Italy. And I would now like to invite our very eminent speaker, Mr. Alan Baer. I would briefly like to introduce him. Mr. Alan Baer is the laureate of Right Livelihood Award from Sweden, which is also known as the Alternate Nobel Prize. He was born in New Zealand and he was a peace educator and campaigner and has been campaigning in the areas of peace, non-violence, nuclear abolition, international law, women's rights, children's rights, and the environment. He has served as the global coordinator for parliamentarians for nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament since it was founded in the year 2002. And he works from the Basel Peace Office in Switzerland and has been working very closely with the United Nations and many eminent justices and lawyers around the world to completely abolish nuclear weapons from the face of planet Earth. So we welcome Mr. Alan Weir, and he will be sharing some very valuable thoughts, and he'll be sharing the presentation with us through the PPT. Over to Mr. Alan Weir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srivastava, for the introduction, and I also give a thanks to Dr. Jagdish Gandhi and Dr. Bhati Gandhi and to the City Montessori School for the invitation to be part of this very eminent event. It's a great honour and privilege to be part of this, and my commendations for bringing together such experts from around the world to advance the importance of peace, international law, and a common security for current and future generations. As Dr. Srivastava said, my primary focus is on nuclear weapons abolition, and today I'm going to talk about the importance of nuclear abolition for peace, security, and the well-being of current and future generations. Firstly, why worry about nuclear weapons? They've been with us since 1945 and haven't been used in a war since then, but we should not be complacent. Earlier this year in January, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists announced the extremely high risk of a nuclear disaster through accident or through miscalculation or through conflict escalation. There are over 13,000 nuclear weapons, many of them on high alert, ready to be used within minutes. And there are a rise in conflicts between nuclear armed states, whether that's India and Pakistan, US and Russia, or NATO and Russia, in Northeast Asia. So there are possible problem areas. There's also potential for proliferation and acquisition by non-state actors, and the possibility of nuclear weapons being used through cyber attack on nuclear command and control centers. So we should not be complacent. So far we've been lucky we haven't had a nuclear exchange. We can't rely on luck. But nuclear abolition is not important not only to ensure that we have a safe world for the future, but it's also detrimental to our current security. The nuclear weapons budget consumes $100 billion per year. This money should be used to address human security issues such as climate stabilization, public health, and human rights. And by constantly threatening each other with nuclear weapons, it takes away from the cooperation that we need to build back a better planet and the cooperation we need to address the pandemic. There's also legal reasons. Both the International Court of Justice in 1996 and the UN Human Rights Committee in 2018 have affirmed that the threat or use of nuclear weapons is a violation of international humanitarian law, the laws on peace and security, and human rights law, and also that there's an obligation to pursue and achieve the global elimination of nuclear weapons under strict and effective international control. So those are additional reasons for moving ahead in a cooperative way to achieving a nuclear weapons-free world. So I'll just look at 3 examples of actions, initiatives which have been taken, which are open for people to participate in if they so desire, that are taking forward these aspirations to prevent a nuclear war and to move towards the complete abolition and elimination of nuclear weapons. One of those is an appeal that was opened in September last year on the anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. So it's We the Peoples, because the United Nations Charter starts off with We the Peoples of the world. It's our charter, it's our United Nations. So we as the peoples of the world have a role to help fulfill the goals of the United Nations, including the goal of the abolition of nuclear weapons which was established in the very first resolution of the United Nations in January 1946. So the appeal is quite simple. It calls for no first use and non-use of nuclear weapons, reductions in nuclear weapons stockpiles, cutting nuclear weapons budgets and putting those to better purposes, and committing to the elimination of nuclear weapons at the latest by 2045, the 100th anniversary of the United Nations. There are already many eminent people and also regular civil society citizens who have signed on, and others can endorse at unfoldzero.org. Now there's another more concentrated campaign on one aspect of that appeal. That is no first use. Moving the current nuclear armed states to agree that they will never start a nuclear war. At the moment, India and China have no first use policies, but the other nuclear armed states still hold open the option of launching a preemptive nuclear strike or a nuclear strike in a conventional armed conflict, or to deal with cyber attacks. This is very risky and pushes us close to a possible nuclear war. So we're calling this new campaign, No First Use Global, is building support for all of the nuclear armed states to agree to never start a nuclear war. It's already sent an open letter to Presidents Biden and Putin just before their summit. We did get something from them. Both Presidents Biden and Putin agreed that a nuclear war could not be won and so must never be fought. So now we need to work on implementation. And then youth are getting involved through the social media action. Don't even think about starting a nuclear war and taking the signs around the embassies of nuclear armed states in the capitals. The final thing I'll mention is the nuclear weapons money aspect. I mentioned $100 billion a year are spent on nuclear weapons. This is not just money. This is human capital. These are our thinking. You know, we've got scientists working on ways of designing new nuclear weapons rather than working on designing ways to ensure that the climate doesn't collapse. So we need to shift the money, we need to shift the scientific thinking, and there are ways of doing that. One is to cut nuclear weapons budgets in the nuclear armed states. So one example is the Invest in Cures Before Missiles, or the ICBM Act in the United States, initiated by Senator Markey. But not all of us live in nuclear armed states. Everybody can be involved to make sure that we cut investments in the nuclear weapons industry. It's the industry is pushing more money for nuclear weapons. So we can say we're not going to invest, whether we're a private investor or our bank or our pension fund or our government sovereign wealth funds, or if we're in a university that invests or a religious organization, we can call all of them to decide we're not going to invest in nuclear weapons, we're going to invest in better things. Climate stabilization, pandemic recovery, socially responsible investment is the way to go. And that's also to address the climate. We shouldn't be investing in the fossil fuel industry economy as well. We should be investing in renewable energies. So these work together, and the website there, if you're interested, is nuclearweaponsmoney.org. So those are three practical initiatives to take forward the goal of the United Nations for a nuclear weapons-free world. We can't just leave it up to the United Nations or to the governments. We can become active in this. I encourage you to do so. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about this. I have hope that we can prevent a nuclear war and that we can move towards the achievement of a nuclear weapons-free world at least by 2045, the 100th anniversary of the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alan Ware, for that very, very deep insight into what we are looking at, especially the budgeting part and the amount we need for the whole world right now. It's available right there in the form of, nuclear weapons, which we don't really need at all. So drawing the attention of the world judiciary to this fact that we are spending more than $100 billion on amassing things of destruction, where we need so much more finances to rebuild the world as it recovers from this pandemic, and drawing our attention to the fact that each of us could contribute in our own way, visiting the websites and making our voice heard. Thank you so much, because this is perhaps an aspect into which we had not thought of. We were so busy with with the basic aspects of life coming back to normalcy, that this is a threat which we had shifted our attention from. So I think you have done a great job of bringing back the focus on the threat to humanity, apart from what we are already facing. Thank you so much. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite the video message. Okay, all right. Yeah. For the video message of His Excellency Mr. Stepan Mesic, former President of Croatia, and the second President of Croatia, who has been a championing patron of this World Chief Justices Conference we hold every year. And he has been with us so many times. He attended online in 2020 and personally all the years from 2014 to 2019. He really believes in the power of the judiciary. So can we please have the video message from His Excellency Mr. Stepan Mesic, former President of Croatia.
Ekscelencije, gospođe i gospodo, uvaženi sudionici skupa, sastajemo se na način i u formatu koji je odraz vremena i prilika u kojima živimo. Parce que je ne parle pas anglais, mon ami qui est ici, il parle anglais.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and guests, we are meeting in a formal reflective of the unique times and circumstances facing us. These times and circumstances are difficult and anything but normal. However, it is expected of us to become accustomed to what is now referred to as new normal, accepting daily statistics showing the number of infected with COVID-19, and tragically also those who have succumbed to the fight against the virus. From us, it is expected that we remain normal. The question is how. How to stay normal in abnormal times, how to gain strength, and where to find the haven of salvation during this pandemic storm. I would like to share some of my thoughts with you on this topic. We are already experiencing the third wave of the pandemic. Some optimists claim that we are coming out of it. Is the fourth wave on the way? Nobody knows for certain. The situation varies from country to country. New mutations in the virus are emerging. Vaccinations are being carried out, but disproportionately, with the majority of vaccinations deployed to developed countries, but only a small part to the undeveloped ones. There is no unified policy on the global level to combat this pandemic. Not only do protective measures vary from nation state to nation state, but even within states. Local authorities cannot agree on what is unavoidable, what is good, and what is superfluous. The same applies to vaccines. Western countries are forcing their vaccines. Russian, although it was made first, is not getting approval to enter the European Union market, although it is in use in more than 60 countries and even two EU members. States have departed from the political boycott of Sputnik. I consciously use this term as it is the appropriate one. The Russian vaccination is not getting approval from the competent European institutions. Let's face it, I am not here in the role of the Russian vaccine advocate nor any other. Experts need to have their say about its quality. I cite this example only to emphasize the maliciousness of hesitation, the politicization that has nothing to do with politics and should not be allowed to impact on our genuine will to approach a global problem jointly, seeking agreement and in harmony. There were appeals for this approach from the Secretary General of the United Nations all the way to the President of the People's Republic of China. Their appeals fell on deaf ears. Some politicians have even gone so far as to declare the Russian vaccine as a weapon of hybrid warfare. How twisted can a mind become to develop such an idea? How long does it take to get brainwashed and forget that our neighbors' problems today can easily become our problems tomorrow? What can we conclude from a person who refuses to accept the obvious and undeniable fact that the virus threatens the human race? Not threaten a nation or state, but the whole of human race. In this mental anarchy, interwoven with second-rate politicizing, how can one find the strength needed to resist not only the mental effects of the virus, but the whole atmosphere in which the world has been living for a year and a half? How can we understand that it can be more important for some or anyone to make a persistent effort to attribute the source of pandemic to one country and to declare it guilty than to try to unify forces, abilities and determination to battle the pandemic. Perhaps those who ironically notice that humanity is no longer capable of reacting to anything in unison except perhaps to an alien invasion are right. And since the virus did not arrive from space, we remain fragmented, divided, and left to relive a nightmare of mutual suspicion and accusation, all clothed in a mantle of struggle for democracy and human rights. The fact that we live in a world that is more interdependent and connected than ever is a paradox, but nevertheless holds true. Is dangerous, worrying, and sad. Somewhere we made a big mistake. As we have accepted the thesis that the interpretation of democracy is only what one side believes it to be. And if we have come to the terms with the fact that anyone can, by invoking their human rights, terrorize others, denying them their human rights. Today, this is saving human lives, restraining pandemics by necessary epidemiological measures and vaccination. This pandemic is showing us that the priority is human life. Together in solidarity, we must face the challenges of our times. The pandemic is just one of these challenges. Time is slipping away for us to come to a realization and awareness that things must change. I would even go so far to say that the clock has struck midnight, and it is now or never. I take this opportunity to thank all the students and the professors of Montessori City School and the tireless works of Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdom, and Professor Sandeep Srivastava. Thank you all for your attention and this opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very thought-provoking talk, where you talked about how the situation, in the current situation owing to the pandemic, varies from country to country. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any unified policy to combat this problem. What is good, what is superfluous, is a constant doubt lurking in everybody's mind. Seeking agreement by way of a policy which is devoid of malice and politics is what is ideally being thought about, is what you talked about. It's not just a threat for a particular country or a particular set of people, but a threat for the entire human race. And it is in a situation such as this that interdependence and connect as never before can be the only solution to this problem. Together in solidarity, we can come out triumphant, is what you spoke about. And it's so profound and so meaningful when you say that. The time is now or never. Thank you so much, sir, for that very profound talk. It's time now for me to invite our next speaker, Honorable Justice Dr. Fernando E. Leon Quinday, Judge, Provincial Court of Justice, Ecuador. He attended the International Conference of the Chief Justices hosted by City Montessori School, personally in the year 2019 and online in the year 2020. A very warm welcome to you, sir, for having joined us today on this occasion, the 17th of July, the World Day for International Justice. A very warm welcome to you once again. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Dear friend, from my country, Ecuador, located in the south of the American continent, I present a fraternal and supportive greeting to the newborn nation of India, very affected by disastrous coronavirus pandemic, and to all the people of the world. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared that an outbreak of the coronavirus disease was identified in December 2019 in the city of the Wuhan, China, which had reached the level of a global pandemic and your concern about high standard of spread and severity. So it had asked government to take immediate action to stop its spread. human right guarantee of people the right to health being the obligation of the government to guarantee and apply effective measures to prevent public health and free medical care to those who require it. The magnitude of the COVID-19 pandemic is an attack on public health that has resulting restrictions on rights such as the imposition of quarantine or isolation.
मुझे कर
We
दीजिए
have
अच्छा, मैं
limited freedom of transit, therefore, a measure adopted to protect the population that limits right and freedom must be allowed in. The legal framework and be proportional, taking into account the impact on marginalized or impoverished sector. As we know, the right to health is linked to other human rights, the right to live, housing, work, education, human dignity, non-discrimination, equality, non-torture, access to information, among others. These rights also include that health centers must be sufficient in quantity and quality, be easily accessible to all, and be adequately prepared in medical and scientific terms. The coronavirus pandemic has affected most of the nations of the world in the areas of health, economic, social, educational, etc. Their government not being properly prepared to face it, creating a true of restriction and even violation of human rights to stop the spread. Use the appropriate promotion and technical assistance mechanism of the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights and its representatives as tools to strengthen the state's effort to face the problem caused by the health crisis. Finding ways to guarantee a peaceful and caring society is a priority. Thus, the Secretary General of the United Nations has made urgent call for an immediate ceasefire in all corners of the world and for a joint international effort to combat the pandemic that is plaguing the world. After little more than a year of the pandemic, the world has faced a situation of pain and suffering. Unfortunately, many lives have been lost, affecting the economies and with it the most vulnerable. And today tends to be seen we can glimpse the light and hope at the end of the tunnel, which will allow us to embrace again as brothers and with a single north to defend lives and health, to achieve a better coexistence with peace and social justice, non-discrimination, and equality, which guarantees the well-being of without borders and strengthen ourselves with dignity in adversity, to preserve the life of this present and future generation as the best of that can be paid to the majesty of justice, the supreme goal of the states. Thank you very much. En honor.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Dr. Fernando E. Leon Quinday. And you gave such a meaningful message that we must embrace each other, reach out to each other, learn to coexist, to ensure social justice and well-being without borders. That is perhaps the only need of the hour. Thank you so much for reminding us that justice has majesty in it and justice shall triumph. Thank you so much once again. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite Honorable Justice Ms. Rosa Maria Acon, Substitute Judge of Criminal Chamber, Supreme Court, Costa Rica. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
May I humbly request Honorable Justice Rosa Apple to please unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you properly, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you
Can
so
you
much. Now it's clear.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, Mrs. Bharti Gandhi, Dr. Geeta Gandhi, CMS family, Chief Justices and Judges of the world, friends from humanitarian organizations. It is a pleasure to share with you this privileged space in this second International Conference on World Day for International Justice. The judicial power of Costa Rica promotes initiatives and institutional policies for access to justice, mainly for people in vulnerable conditions who come in search of protection and restitution of the rights with which the administration of justice must provide. The human rights of women, people with disabilities, indigenous peoples, Afro-descendants, migrants, the elderly, children and adolescents, refugees, persons deprived of liberty, minors in conflict with the law, among other populations in conditions of vulnerability, are rights that people have and their particular needs cannot be invisible to the public administration. We carry out our mission to ensure access to justice for all people, aspiring to the best conditions they need to face, such as poverty, limitation in access to education and health, discrimination of all kinds for reasons of gender, ethnicity, criminality, and environmental degradation, which is a threat to the well-being and survival of human beings. Our experience is that we have developed projects with the advice and support of the Aerosolution program in Costa Rica. This is a cooperation program that the European Union has achieved together with the Costa Rican institutions for the improvement of social cohesion in Latin America, which has been working for 15 years in the region and in my country. This project shows the importance and validity of promoting policies that affect the main inequality gaps facing the region, and that in 2020 have been exacerbated in the face of the global health crisis. This is such as the Brazilian rules on access to justice for people in vulnerable conditions. Open justice, where the first public policy on the subject was co-created, being a historical milestone in the international judicial field focused on producing greater satisfaction of users of the service of access to justice provided by the institution, restorative justice to guarantee access to job training, opportunities, and health to people sentenced in the execution phase of juvenile criminal sanctions to promote their social insertion under the justice and restorative justice. The pandemic has shown the true and real social face of my country and of many countries around the world. Never the humanity has had so much in common with this virus, and yet never it has been so far apart in handling the pandemic in a supportive and coordinated way. In many countries, the loss of employment, restrictions, isolation, and quarantine has brought social turbulence, serious repercussions on the economy and its governance. We were always talking about equality, peace, and globalization, But the first thing each country did when this started was close its borders to protect its nationals from the coronavirus, discriminating people from outside and leaving them abandoned and in distress. And after that, we have seen that while in some countries there is plenty of COVID-19 vaccines, in this third world, as in my country, there is a desperate fight for getting vaccination. The coronavirus has created unprecedented emergencies, and the countries have postponed the defense of human rights to fight against the pandemic and its effects, affecting the services, the crucial services, the fundamental services created in order to bring justice and health to everybody closer to the country's inhabitants. We need to keep building a fair and sustainable future during the pandemic and also after COVID-19. What we have learned with Corona and the emergency it brought to the world is that we urgently need to enhance effective global cooperation. I mean, a strong and efficient multilateral system. We need global leadership, collective action, and shared responsibilities in support of current and future generations. Without a doubt, the coronavirus will leave us many lessons and the maturity to face other no less important challenges that humanity has. To leave our children a safe world where they can live in the future. I have faith in the human being, its wisdom and ability to react from suffering and from human history. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that enlightening talk, where you talked about the importance of protection of human rights, especially for those who are in vulnerable situations and conditions. You talked about this global health crisis, which all of us are having to come to terms with. But we need to fight it out, and for that, to be able to have access to justice for ensuring well-being and survival of human beings is a must. You talked about your concerns pertaining to social and economic turbulence in today's times, and how in certain situations people are being abandoned because of this pandemic to be able to battle things on their own and left alone to fight the situation. You talked about how there is deprivation, or rather a disadvantage of not being able to get vaccinated in this situation, which can pose a very serious problem. And therefore, you spelt aloud this urgent need, this absolutely imperative need for a strong global leadership and a strong system in place to be able to ensure peaceful coexistence and a healthy coexistence for everybody inhabiting the planet. Thank you so very much for that enlightening talk, ma'am. And now it's time for me to invite our next speaker, Honorable Miss Justice Halima Sadulkar, Judge, Supreme Court of Appeal, South Africa, who happened to attend the International Conference of Chief Justices of the World hosted by CMS in the year 2015. Honorable Miss Justice Halima Sadulkar, a very, very warm welcome to you, ma'am.
And it might be added that there's a lot of unrest in South Africa at the moment, and the judiciary is also having to deal with it. In fact, it's as a result of the judicial order on Jacob Zuma that this protest is happening. So it'd be very interesting to hear from you.
Yes. Namaste, everyone. Honorable Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, the organized conference, my international colleagues, distinguished guests, all the participants, the teachers and the children of the Montessori School. I'm Justice Halima Sadulkar of the Supreme Court of Appeal in South Africa, the beloved country of our Nelson Mandela. It is truly an honor and a privilege for me to be here. And I'm very pleased to participate in this conference. When I was last there, I made some long-lasting friends, and which I continue to this day to be friends with them. So I feel like I'm at home now. It appears that one morning we all got up to find that the world that we knew was not to be the same. It was a surreal experience for all of us. The World Health Organization had declared that there was an outbreak of the viral COVID-19, which had now reached global proportions. This became a truly testing time for all the leaders and the inhabitants of our global village, threatening our justice, peace, security, and well-being of the world. So this year, I must say, and I'm privileged to be part of a conference that stresses these important features that are affecting all and sundry all over the world. And thank you very much to the organizers for stressing this topic for all of us. Because of the severity of its effects and the alarming spread, aggressive and urgent attention had to be undertaken by all the governments of all the world to curb the spread. And it is more than a year now, but it appears that the spread has not stopped and it has actually cost many lives. So this is the challenge that we all have: saving lives and stopping the spread. There are multiple dimensions to this virulent disease and profound consequences for world peace, well-being, peace and security. All are affected: women, children, the elderly, those in war-ravaged countries, refugee camps, and those that have been displaced. The particular effect on women and children needs to be emphasized, and they require gender-based responses. Lockdown restrictions have not made it easy because it comes with its own costs. COVID has impacted on the economy, exacerbating inequalities, stressing health, poor healthcare systems that some countries have, unemployment and poverty. Many in the world are experiencing unemployment. Those who live in refugee camps and informal settlements like we have in South Africa, which are quite a few, and in other parts of the world, are mostly without basic sanitation, with or without COVID, without water, without electricity. Their living conditions are dire. Gender-based violence and domestic abuse have grown in alarming proportions. Children are out of school, parents are out of work, parents are at home, and people are out of jobs. So what we are having is a number of cases that are coming to the courts. Government has put in place in our country regulations in terms of the Disaster Management Act, which assists in having matters disposed of quickly, efficiently on web-based hearing, which is virtual hearing on either Zoom or MS Teams. The court where I sit, and we together with 26 other judges, because this is the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the highest court of appeal, as you understand, is the Constitutional Court, and then we have us, which is the Supreme Court of Appeal. We have almost disposed of all our matters on virtual hearing. So access and commitment to justice remains key. Regulations set out how court cases can continue during the pandemic. Where possible, courts are encouraged to engage in remote hearing via Wi-Fi. The High Courts and the Supreme Courts of Appeal have very successfully been able to conduct these hearings remotely. A single technology platform which we use, MS Teams, has been chosen for the hearings. As the court that we sit in, either sit in 3s and 5s, then we have the attorneys, the interested parties, sometimes even the media. We have an administrator that sends out the link to all the parties. 2 links are normally sent out. One is for the hearing itself, and the other is for the confidential post-hearing conference discussions that take place on how we're going to decide that particular matter that comes before us. An integral part of the remote hearings is the staff of the court. They need to be trained and they need to know all the information that can be set up and sent on a link to all the parties and participants in the hearing. Self-represented litigants can also participate. The court administrator provides the link and how to conduct the hearings. And of course, all this requires internet access, and the security of the proceedings is very important. Many countries are facing challenges both on a social, economic, and a political level. It is, as I said, a truly testing time for leaders of the country. In South Africa, I think the whole world knows, we have been marred by unrest and looting. Measures have been put in place to curb the unrest and rebuild the areas that have been affected. And it's very heartening to see communities united in their diversity, trying to rebuild our country and to reset it. Of course, it will take some time, but we've been there. We are a country that Nelson Mandela set out the democracy, and in his footsteps, we will follow and we will overcome. The severity of the virus has affected peace, security, and well-being of the world. Isolation, quarantining, limiting freedom of movement has affected all our lives, especially the poor, the vulnerable in many regions. Unemployment and food shortages are rife. The virus has spared no one. Vaccination drives to curb the rising levels of the virus is actually very encouraging. Many people have put their names down to be registered for the vaccine. At the moment in South Africa, we have started registration of people between the ages of 35 to 49. Those who are over 60 are already first injections and in the process of getting their second injections. Hopefully the numbers of those contracting the virus will reduce, bringing about stability in the region. After all, the virus is even more deadlier than a gun. There should be a concerted effort made to staying safe globally, quarantining, sanitizing, and every effort to ensure peace, security, justice, and well-being for all in this global village. Our world, our Mother Earth. Saving lives should be a priority for all. I thank you, everyone, and stay safe until we all see each other again one day, hopefully, face to face.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful elucidation of your feelings and emotions, which we could read as you presented the reality of your country. And I absolutely love the way how you emphasized the phrase, our world. It's truly our world. And each of us has to nurture it. And the fact that women and children, that vulnerable section of society, they need our help the most.
Absolutely.
And how wonderfully you illustrated the areas where they need that help. And you said that the stark reality of the whole world is same. We are united even in our grief, in our sufferings. And this inherent recognition of the unity of humanity will form the basis of the rebuilding of the global society. We firmly believe. And it was so eye-opening to see how the judicial system has responded to the challenge and rebuild itself, and how you've been able to dispose of most of the cases that are pending. I think indeed there is a global lesson to be learned from that reality. And I appreciate you for emphasizing on the message that we must realign ourselves to our current reality, to look at the current reality of the world and respond accordingly, which is really the need of an hour. The fact that communities in South Africa have united in their diversity, we applaud that, because we here in India celebrate our diversity with a very unified slogan of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, that the world is a global village. Thank you for that call, for a concerted effort to stay safe globally. We hope and pray for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And with this, it would be my great pleasure to invite our very beloved Justice Dr. B.J. Odoki, who has been such a powerful orator and who shares right from the heart. So the stage is all yours, Justice Odoki.
Thank you very much, Madam Director of the program. My good friend, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, and conveners of this conference. Your Excellencies, Honorables, legal luminaries, distinguished speakers and participants, the staff and students of Citizenship Montessori School, the great one, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Jagdish Gandhi and the conveners of this conference on World Day for International Justice for once again inviting me to participate in this historic important conference. I commend Dr. Jagdish Gandhi for his continued pursuit of his dream to build a united, peaceful world based on enforceable international law. I pledge my support for the realization of this dream. The theme of the conference, which is justice, peace, security, and well-being of the world during a pandemic, is very critical in reviewing and discussing the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has adversely affected all nations and communities of the world, though in varying degrees. Justice, peace, and security, and well-being of people are all interrelated and interdependent. There can be no peace without justice, nor can there be development without justice, peace, and security. The pandemic has affected the realization of social justice and human rights due to the health crisis. The fundamental right to life and livelihood has been seriously affected by lack of adequate health response to the pandemic through immunization and treatment. Many countries have experienced high death tolls and shortage of vaccines and treatment like oxygen. Uganda has endeavored to develop its own local treatment and developed two drugs called Covidex and Covilix by universities, two universities. These drugs have been approved for use in treatment of COVID patients together with others. This initiative is not intended to cut out treatment which is normally given and vaccination which every person in the country is looking forward to. We must encourage each country to take opportunity to develop appropriate treatment for coronavirus. We must encourage wide vaccination of the populations to prevent the spread and the occurrence of the virus. The good news is that vaccination in many countries is free, unlike testing, which in many countries is to be paid for. We must call upon countries, rich countries, to donate vaccines to the poor nations because we need to protect each other if we are to resume no more world travel, interaction, and cooperation. Another sector which has been seriously affected is education. Lockdowns and closure of schools and colleges has created a crisis of learning and teaching, a cloud over certain terrains amongst learners as to their future. Digital learning, which has been promoted as the solution, is expensive and may not be accessible to all learners. Governments need therefore to invest more in this area. Restrictions on movement and closure of business have resulted in decline in economic growth and development and have increased inequalities within communities. Unemployment looms, social ills like domestic violence have surfaced. Countries need to take urgent measures to ameliorate the adverse effects of this pandemic on the poor and the vulnerable people. In Uganda, some efforts have been made to provide cash payments on those who are vulnerable, especially in urban areas who have lost jobs. Declarations of state of emergency and lockdowns have the effect of constraining the ability of the communities to access justice and resolve the disputes peacefully. Some of these processes have led to crackdown on dissent and constraining democratic rights of association and information. Such actions by the state ought to be restricted to a situation when the security of the state is threatened. Therefore, courts of law should always be open to maintain peace and solve disputes amicably. I'm concluding because I was given 5 minutes. In conclusion, I must emphasize that in order to attain justice, peace, development, throughout the world, all nations must be united in purpose to fight this pandemic through a shared responsibility. I emphasize, through a shared responsibility. As has been said, the path of peace is a shared development. If we do not want a war to go global, justice must go global. Remember, God is one, Religion is one, and humanity is one. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. As always, your talk has been very profound and enlightening. You talked about how, unfortunately, there's been lack of adequate response to the crises that have come to surface owing to the pandemic. You talked about how important it is to encourage vaccination to spread the control, to control the spread, of the virus, and how rich the countries, the haves, have to be more magnanimous in being able to donate the vaccines to the have-nots, to the countries who are suffering inadequacies. You talked about how education has been impacted owing to this pandemic and how there's a lot of crisis that has come to surface in terms of teaching learning, and that there is an absolute imperative need for the government to invest in this direction, to sort of take charge and take control and ensure that learning is not impacted owing to this situation. You talked about unemployment, the economic problems that have come to surface because of this pandemic, and yet how the assurance that you gave in terms of how law and justice can help in the solution, in finding solutions to these problems by solving disputes amicably, and that there is an absolute need for all nations to unite in purpose and to have a sense of shared responsibility to ensure peace and unity across the world. Thank you so much, sir, as always, for that wonderful talk. Time now for me to invite Honorable Mr. Justice Karl Ashok Singh, former Chancellor of the Judiciary of Guyana. Sir has been attending the International Conference of the World by CMS ever since 2006. He was with us in 2006, followed by 2010, his participation in 2010, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, where he was here by way of physical presence and happened to attend our conference online last year in 2020. Sir, to quote you, you have said that since India recognized the problem of terrorism as a threat, it should take recourse to the directive principles of state policy enshrined in the Indian Constitution and take the lead. You've said that it is in your view that PM Modi has emerged as a leader with regional and international stature. He is well placed in the spirit to emerge as the world's champion of peace. Unquote. Over to you, sir, and a very, very warm welcome, as always.
May I humbly request Honorable Justice Karl Ashok Singh to please unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you, sir.
Pleasant good morning to everyone. Are you hearing me now?
You are audible, sir. You are audible.
Thank you very much. I take the opportunity to say thanks to the organizers of this event, Doctors Jagdish and Bharti Gandhi, and Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdom, as well as to this event organizational engineer, Professor Sandeep Srivastava, for the kind invitation that has been extended to me to participate in this event. This day, the World International Justice Day, is the day selected to mark the adoption of the Rome Statute, the treaty that created the International Criminal Court, the world's first permanent international court with jurisdiction over certain international crimes, including war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. It is troubling that some countries have refused to accede to the jurisdiction of the court and are not signatories to the Rome Statute. They contend inter alia that the inclusion of the crime of aggression weakens the role of the United Nations Security Council, that the use of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction have not been specifically criminalized, and that the establishment of the court dilutes the concept of national sovereignty. These criticisms apart, the court is with us and is functioning. On a page on the court's website is to be found the following statement, quote, "Justice is a key prerequisite for lasting peace. International justice can contribute to long-term peace, stability, and equitable development in post-conflict societies. These elements are foundational for building a future free of violence." End of quote. I reflected on the above statement and concluded that the theme of this conference was very apt. That is, justice, peace, security, and well-being of the world during the pandemic. I mean no disrespect to the organizers of this event, and I intend no discourtesy to them, but only wish respectfully to observe that justice, peace, security, and well-being are continuing needs and demands of the peoples of the world. So we find that all forms of racial discrimination constitute offenses under international law as a crime against humanity. The pernicious system of apartheid, a dark stain on the history of South Africa, comes readily to mind. But it is known that racial discrimination, marginalization, violence, and continue to affect various communities around the world. The Black Lives Matter movement in the United States was spawned these very issues. These circumstances are compounded when governments are installed through fraudulent electoral processes and thereafter embark on forms of governance that subtly place significant sections of their citizens in positions of societal pressure, disadvantage, and oppression. In the 70s and 80s, I lived in these circumstances. I know it well. On another note, crimes against humanity also significantly affect women and young girls and include acts of rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, and other forms of sexual violence. I submit the above examples tell the story that all is not well with justice, peace, security, and the well-being of the persons affected in the above examples. And those were not intended to be exhaustive of the various forms of international criminality around the world. Additionally, violence continues to affect people in various parts of the world. Venezuela, as well as the Israel-Palestine conflict, come readily to mind. In violence-torn communities, poverty, disease, and hunger are widespread. And justice, peace, security, and the well-being of those affected are absent. I am very mindful of the time constraints that were indicated. And so, in a past dispensation, I insisted that instructions should be obeyed, and so I am in full compliance. I therefore end where I began and wish only to record my full and complete agreement with the earlier referred to statement that justice is a key prerequisite for lasting peace. Jai Jagat. Thank you very much.
Sir, for that reiteration of the CMS. I believe that justice is to be for the world, not for societies, for the world. And that is why we celebrate the victory of the world. And as you said in your address, that any form of discrimination against anyone, any race, any people, is a crime against humanity. And that is what we hope to incite in our children, that they feel that way. They understand that a crime against any one of them is a crime against all. And they all must gather together and fight against such injustice. Thank you so much for reiterating and in very honest words speaking about the condition of the world and what we need to do as the citizens of a global village. Thank you for that wonderful address and for respecting the boundary of time that you imposed on yourself. And we would love to hear you whenever we come face to face once again. And then lined up is another august personality who gives us great pleasure and brings in so much new learning and knowledge each time he is with us. And it's none other than our Honorable His Excellency, Mr. Justice Anthony Thomas Carmona, the 5th President of Trinidad and Tobago, who has been so prolific in his addresses and who always touched upon the reality of his times and kept us spellbound by elucidating on whatever topic he spoke on. I welcome you. It's my great privilege to welcome you on behalf of the City Montessori School family. And to introduce him, I would request Mr. Sandeep to please do the honors.
It's my own privilege and honor to introduce His Excellency Mr. Justice Anthony Thomas Carmona, the 5th President of Trinidad and Tobago from 2013 to 2018, and he is also a judge of the Trinidad and Tobago, and then he was a judge in the International Criminal Court. Today is the day for strengthening the International Criminal Court, and we have just heard Dr. Kalashok Singh, and there is a great bond of friendship between these two dignitaries. They are classmates, as I have been told by Justice Anthony Thomas Carmona. They have studied in the same school, so it's a great honor to welcome these two dignitaries on this very special day. We have heard Justice Kalachok Singh, and now it's turn for Justice Anthony Thomas Cornoma to bless us with his inspiring words. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my dear students, inspiration and inspirational teachers of City Montessori School, your very progressive executive, my special friend, one that we love tremendously, Dr. Judges Gandhi, and his inspirational, illustrious, and beautiful family, Professor Gandhi, Dr. Gandhi, and of course, how could I forget the hard-working Professor Sandeep, for your patience and your competency in engaging all the leaders of the world to come forward in the spirit of humanity. The World Day for International Criminal Justice resonates with me personally as it commemorates the anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute on the 17th of July, 1998. The founding treaty of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, with a jurisdictional mandate to protect citizens of the world from genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and now the crime of aggression. I recall with nostalgia my tenure as special advisor on criminal law to the late A.N.R. Robinson, former Prime Minister and later President of Trinidad and Tobago, who is universally recognized as the grandfather of the ICC, who reactivated what had become by 1989 a dormant idea for the establishment of a permanent international criminal court. I recall personally the long, arduous hours of negotiation that we all experienced at the preparatory committee meetings of the Rome Statute Bill at the United Nations in New York. I later served as an appeals counsel at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the ICTY and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR. The first West Indian to serve in that capacity at an international war crimes tribunal. The last tribunal being at Nuremberg after World War II, a tribunal vested with the authority of victors' jurisdiction rather than one steeped in universal justice. At the ICTY and ICTR, I came face to face with the egregious acts of man's inhumanity to man. I therefore feel humbled to have been part of such pioneering work that would support and bolster global justice, promote victims' rights, and help prevent crimes that threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world. The journey to universal justice and jurisdiction is not an easy one. Persistent activism is required to maintain and support the momentum of the ICC to address impunity and to placate the doubting Thomases about the court's efficacy and effectiveness. The World Day for International Criminal Justice therefore offers us the opportunity to reaffirm our vigilance in defense of the rule of law, natural justice, due process, and fundamental rights and freedom regimes in our individual countries. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected every region of the world, causing tremendous consternation and strife. The 2021 edition of the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World, published last week, a collaborative effort of the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, and the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization, alluded to people's inaccessibility to food, and this rose by 320 million to 2.37 billion in 2020. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, there are 768 million undernourished people in the world, rising by 180 million in 2020, with 41 million possibly starving to death. A hungry man is an angry man, and this represents a threat to the peace, security, and stability of every nation. Post-COVID-19 recovery must therefore address human rights violation, increasing and alarming poverty, rising inequalities, structural, institutional, and entrenched discrimination. In the midst of the fourth industrial revolution and the information age, The right of every individual to have access to information and communication technology is now a fundamental part of the human rights spectrum. We cannot and must not, we must no longer perpetuate the digital divide. Poor children, poor countries, and poor children in rich countries without access to the internet or devices such as laptops or tablets will not keep up with their more fortunate counterparts, and there's a real risk that many will be left behind, much to the detriment of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Global Agenda. The gap between the haves and the have-nots will widen, aggravating social norms and undermining a culture of peace. Any discussion, therefore, on justice, peace, security, and well-being must include just and inclusive measures to safeguard and protect the rights and dignity of women and young girls. UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women, has stated, and I quote, "Across every sphere, from health to the economy, security to social protection, the impacts of COVID-19 are exacerbated for women and girls simply by virtue of their sex," end of quote. Limited resources are being diverted from issues related to women's and girls' empowerment to immediate COVID-19 relief. And I have noticed that the COVID-19 pandemic economic recovery teams in most countries are not inclusive enough, even discriminatory, for women and young people are not sufficiently represented. These economic recovery teams, by their exclusionary practices, have demonstrated an inability to craft realistic economic and recovery strategies for the short to medium term. Justice, peace, security, and well-being can only be realized and perpetuated in a world that honors its inter- and intergenerational responsibility to the environment. If we are serious about protecting our biodiversity and stemming the global rise of sea levels that threaten the very existence of small island development states and even developed states, we must protect the territorial integrity of mankind. I therefore wish to reiterate my call for the establishment of the International Environmental Court, without prejudice to the mandates of existing institutions, to effectively deal with environmental transnational impunity. As I stated previously, at the World Humanitarian Drive WHD Trade for Peace Virtual Conference, UK, the G7 at the summit held in Cornwall, UK in June 2021, has formulated a communique very comprehensive in intent and sensitive to the pressing global challenges, but they must ensure it is not starved for action and implementation. Further, if they are committed to the spirit and philosophy of the communique, they must not treat the G193 countries as sidebar and adjunct, and the G193 countries that I refer to are the 193 countries of the United Nations General Assembly. Any attempt to engage in a build back better philosophy as espoused must not be building back the same economic structures that operate to the advantage of the few and the miserly demise of the many. There must be genuine SIDS inclusivity at G7 summits and meetings so that the core developed countries in this grouping can be made to understand our peculiar challenges. President Emmanuel Macron has shown the way when he hosted the G7 summit in Biarritz in August 2019 by inviting non-member countries like Australia, Chile, Egypt, India, Iran, Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa, and Spain. Interestingly enough, G7 countries' largesse has a genesis in the exploitation of the resources of SIDS when viewed in a historical context. The United Nations must therefore advocate that SIDS deserve parity, equity, and justice at the table of global economics. The UN therefore, as a matter of urgency, and given international concerns for justice, peace, security, and well-being, ought to address and advance issues of reparation for slavery in all its permutations and existing systemic discrimination before the General Assembly expeditiously. Finally, as we commemorate World Day for International Criminal Justice, we must ensure that we are not becoming ritualistic in our celebrations or perhaps occasion persons, and take stock of what has happened in the past year to make the difference. And more importantly, what needs to be done to ensure the change we seek for the many who do not enjoy fundamental human rights, justice, peace, security, and well-being globally. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very impacting, very powerful. Your nostalgia, where you talked about your tenure with the ICC was palpable, sir. How you went down the memory lane yourself about your association with the ICC and your tenure there. The fact that you talked about, the reaffirming fact that you talked about in terms of, you know, the rule of law and how it has to be ascertained in a manner where entire humanity benefits out of it. You talked about the inadequacies and brought to light about this fundamental inaccessibility for people in terms of food, where you mentioned the data and figures saying 768 million people across the world were undernourished and 41 million were suffering starvation. Also the fact that, yes, needless to say, a hungry man is an angry man. And that can be very, very dangerous in terms of, you know, a deprivation of a very serious magnitude. Human rights, the violation of human rights currently in the current scenario was your cause for concern in your talk. And you said very emphatically here that keeping in mind today's times, turbulent times, owing to the impact of the pandemic, how technology should now be a part of the human rights spectrum in terms of establishing connectivity and collaboration across the world. You talked about not just the gap, but the gulf between the haves and the have-nots, and that it's about time we as a human race are able to bridge that gulf and bring together this feeling of, you know, equality, justice, and well-being for all. Thank you so much, sir, for that very, very impacting talk. It's time now for me to invite Mr. Shishir to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Carmen Balestero, founder PAX Universal Brazil.
We are very fortunate to have We're very fortunate to have Ms. Carmen Balestero with us. She represents PAX International and she has been working for the cause of world peace for many, many years now. She has been a representative of the famous World Peace Prayer Society, which is led by Ms. Masami Sayonji in Japan. And she has been trying to come to CMS for many years, but she was only successful to come over here in the year 2019, 2 years ago. And since then, she has been wanting to invite our founders and our president to Brazil, but we are waiting that the situation gets to normal. So she will invite them to Sao Paulo, where she is from Brazil. And she has sent us a lovely video message. So we'll be first playing a video message, which Carmen has said. She has joined us right in the afternoon, and it has been quite early in the morning in Brazil. So over to the video message, and then we'll invite her to say a few words as well. Thank you.
Carmen Balestero from São Paulo, Brazil, Fraternidade Pax Universal, a metaphysical organization for 40 years. We've been praying for universal peace and healing. And it's an honor to be part of this wonderful event, the International Day of Justice, all around Mother Earth, along with many other colleagues and friends that I had the opportunity to meet personally in 2019 when I was there at the City of Montessori School. And I'd like to thank Dr. Gandhi, Dr. Gita Gandhi, and Mr. Shashir and all the people in the board of directors that have this wonderful, fantastic work for education. At this time that we are living during this pandemic, justice and peace and also safety are keywords so that we can really realign our thoughts and our ways of feelings. I feel that in all countries, the people that have been having enough patience and have been having been really going deeper into their own thoughts and trying to reanalyze and realign their own feelings and to really visualize and take the opportunity and responsibility of embracing all these new big changes are very successful right now, and they are really going through this period of time in an easier way than most of us here that are incarnated on Mother Earth. Of course, that for everything there is a big reason, and education is also a key word for this time and for this momentum. And I want to honor all of you and all the board of directors of City of Montessori School for this wonderful work that has been actually leading the way to all the next generations, so that people can really reinforce their own inner values, and they can always be opening up their own minds through their own perception, co-creating a better world with a vision of equality and fraternity and unity. And unity is the bottom line of this time. And in the spirit of brotherhood and in the spirit of honoring Mother Nature and respecting each other here that are incarnated, I feel that justice will be always lifting all of us to a realm into our own inner truth. Because truth is the base and the foundation for these new generations and for our own lives at this very moment. Spiritually, as I have been praying and meditating and being in touch with many other people in cultures along all these 40 years around Mother Earth, I feel that spirituality is actually the main vessel for this momentum. And doesn't really matter what kind of practice or devotion, but each human being has to be aligned with their own Christ consciousness and has to be bringing forth the divine spark and the divine spirit of unconditional love, light, and perfection, God within, so that we can all react and act according to our own inner wisdom. So I'd like to also bless all of those that are here and all those people in humankind and all the spirits of nature that bring forth all this momentum of health. And mental health and physical health and emotional health are three keys so that we can be also being more evolved beings, and we can always go through our own times of perception, and we can always be growing bigger and wider in our own minds. So I thank you all for the opportunity of sharing, and we are always here in Brazil to serve God and to serve humankind, and we believe that peace is possible through each mind and each individual that is incarnated, through our own actions and our own acts and intentions and feelings, so that through consciousness we can really draw the line and we can all write together this new historic momentum that we are co-creating this new era of peace. May peace prevail on earth now and forevermore. Thank you all. Namaste. I am Carmen Ballesteiro from São Paulo, Brazil, Fraternidade Pax Universal.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carmen Ballesteiro, for your wonderful speech enlightening us about the unity between the body, mind, and soul. And it's very important that they are integrated in order to work for the cause of world peace, because once an individual, as you said, is at peace with himself or herself, only then can we ensure world peace. You also paid your regards to the CMS management, and you expressed your warm feelings towards what CMS is doing, and we all are very thankful. So on behalf of CMS fraternity, I would like to express our gratitude towards you. And since you are here, maybe, and we are just concluding it in about 5 minutes now, we are well in time. So if you would like to say a few words, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Yes. It's been an honor to have the opportunity of being there physically in 2019 and meeting you all, and it's been an honor to be part of all your virtual events. Thanks so much for the opportunity. As a spiritual leader for 40 years, I'd like to take this time so that we can meditate towards peace, because we believe, our group here in Brazil, Pax Group, and also other people around Mother Earth, we believe that everything that a great number of people have the intention, we can really manifest that. So I'd like to invite you all for a small meditation, 1 minute meditation, so that we can bring forth all this light consciousness towards humankind and through all the chief judges of Mother Earth, because they are really in key positions to change constitution and to change the laws and to bring new discernment for this new era and these new generations that are coming and are growing, all these new people that are going to co-create this new planet that we are all writing together. So let's close our eyes for just 1 minute and let's visualize Mother Earth completely involved into the golden flame for illumination, discernment, and consciousness. And I invoke for the power of light within and light of God, Almighty God, and all of the practice of devotion through all enlightenment of all those spiritual leaders and all political leaders and all chief justices of this conference and all chief justices that are incarnated on Mother Earth at this momentum of transition. May they be vessels of perfection, and their own wisdom will shine through all the light and all the discernment and determination necessaries so that they can rewrite our history as a new civilization. Let's visualize Mother Earth towards the pink flame for love. For love is the foundation and the real communication through all human race. And may we just close this visualization with the white flame for peace. For harmony and peace and unity are the Trinity that will bring forth this new dawn of this new key and this new consciousness. May each human being, may all kingdoms that are here incarnated on Mother Earth elevate their consciousness and be open to this new dawn and this new beginning of the real world that we are all co-creating through the human rights, respect, integrity, humility, courage, and universal peace. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I'm very honored to have met you all at City Montessori School. May God bless you all with all the unconditional love and light and illumination. May peace prevail on earth. May we be the co-creators of this new planet now. Thank you so much. Namaste.
What a
Thank you.
beautiful,
Thank you.
a very beautiful beginning that was made this morning, as our respected president had underlined the realization of our own very spiritual existence as she opened this conference for deliberations. And it would be good to hear her as we come to the end, to the last few minutes of this session and to the end of this conference. And we hope that most of us must have generated a lot of new learning and must be taking it back with us for implementation. And all of us will be engaged in bringing peace, security, justice to this world to ensure the well-being of all its people. So over to you, respected Fernando.
Well, good evening. At least in India, it is good evening, and I know that in many parts of the world, it is good morning, or maybe some places good afternoon. And what a day it has been for us who have attended all the 3 sessions of this conference. And I think I can say that this last session has been the most dynamic one, but we'd had very similar thoughts expressed at all the 3 sessions. These legal leaders of the world and non-legal leaders in their various fields who have been at this conference today, which we have been privileged to be participants in. They've been knowledgeable, impassioned, cogent, persuasive by degrees. And I think that it's so interesting, it's very fortuitous, in fact, that Ms. Carmen Balestro has just talked about the way that she has expressed herself is in fact very similar to the way in which we started this conference in the morning here, where we said, I don't know if it's possible to fix the audio. Yeah, where we said at the start of this conference that, you know, one could give a litany, a list of all the problems that the world faces. And, you know, one could talk about the COVID pandemic and all the problems that it has spawned. One could talk about a whole range of problems. We could talk about climate change, which is one of the major issues. And in particular, we acknowledged right at the start of this conference that the climate change, which is probably the most horrific problem facing mankind in the near future, it's already begun. And now anybody who still had a sense of climate denialism should now hopefully be convinced every day we're witnessing an extreme weather event. So I think that, and I hope that the COVID pandemic, which has given people time to pause and reflect on, you know, how things are, that perhaps that there can be this silver lining, at least now, in the COVID, post-COVID world. Not that we are yet in the post-COVID world, but that as we adjust with the COVID world and hopefully come out of it, that we take the opportunity to reimagine the conditions of the world, that we take the opportunity to readjust the realities of our world, recognizing the major flaws of our system, whether it comes to our relationship with nature, readjusting that relationship, one which is not based on greed and overexploitation and unsustainable living, but one which understands the limits of our natural world despite the needs of our growing populations, or especially in the context of our growing populations. So it may require sacrifice of consumption. It may require major readjustment in the way that we live, but we don't have a planet B. So the need, maybe it is a spiritual issue as much as anything else. The need for this readjustment, the acceptance that we have to live in this world sustainably, and if it means reducing our consumption levels, accepting lower standards of living, if that is what is needed in a just manner, because there are certain parts of the world which do need to grow, where people are extremely deprived, where they do need some basic goods, whose production will create carbon emissions. So readjusting, and so many of our speakers have picked up on this issue of equity. So many of the speakers have talked about how the COVID world has demonstrated that we are so interdependent on each other, that we need to share more. We need to work for equity in this world, that unless we have looked after the last person, the weakest link in the chain, we will not ourselves be well. So even if we were not convinced by the intrinsic reason for sharing, the intrinsic moral reason why we should share our wealth and well-being with others, at least there is now an instrumental reason why we need to do this sharing. So a lot of things were said that were so similar across the sessions. Let us use the COVID pandemic to make a fresh start. The COVID pandemic has shown our interdependency. We need more sharing, more equity. The concern for the last man. If we won't reform now, we never will. That was a very powerful way that His Excellency Mr. Stepan Mesic put it. And by the way, it was so beautiful to hear him speak in the background of that very beautiful green space that he was in. And the bird song in the background was so overwhelmingly beautiful. One couldn't help, commenting on that. And that is the kind of world we want for everyone. And that is the kind of world we need to look for everyone. So that will require climate action. It will require readjustment. And one thing I wanted to say, if I may, in the end, is why it is that we are doing this conference. What is the purpose that a school is doing it? We know what the purpose is because you all have been at this conference before. But I just want to tell you that Vivekananda, who was one of the thinkers and spiritual leaders of India, who lived about 100 years ago. And in fact, he represented Hinduism at the World Congress of Religions in 1893. He said that give me 50 youth and I will, I can guarantee that we can change the world. Now we have here, we may not be youth, but we are youth at heart, I would like to think. And the passion with which people come to this conference, you see, we are a humble school, and you people are heads of government or have recently been heads of government. The fact that you agree to come here, the fact that there are Supreme Court judges here, it is an unimaginable height for educators to meet people even like you. The fact that you agree to come to a forum such as that is provided by a school in a nondescript town in one of the most backward parts of the world, you come to a school. This is not even a university. I think that shows the similarity of aspiration, and that is the point of commonality, and that transcends, positions and titles, that common concern that we have. So I think this band of people who are committed to the cause of this conference are that more than 50 strong group of people. And I think in each of our domestic, jurisdictions and our areas of work, we're trying to do this. And in that context, if I may just very humbly tell you something that I think that will cheer your hearts, and that is that in this year of the pandemic, we at City Montessori School looked at our own selves. We took the opportunity, our leaders, our principals, we have about 21 principals. They sat down for a period of about 6 months, intensively reimagined education. We said that, look, our education, is it answering the needs of the time? Are we imparting the right kind of education for our children? And we realized that we needed to fundamentally change the way in which we are teaching our children. So we have made a plan 2025, a vision 2025 for our school. And one really major element of that is what we are calling citizenship education, by which we mean global citizenship education. And the agenda of this conference has been nothing but global citizenship, how we can become better citizens of this globe. And this is what we are now going to be teaching in a curricular fashion. Up to now, it was the founder manager of our school giving inspirational talks to expand children's thinking, to think about themselves not only as citizens of India, of which they are very proud and very rightly so, but also that we are citizens of the world. So this idea that will now become curricular, all our teachers will be teaching that as part of their subject teaching. If they're teaching maths, they will be bringing examples of statistics from global statistics, so that children's awareness about the world increases. Their awareness of being citizens of the world increases. Whenever they're taught chemistry, there will be topics brought in related to environmental pollution and the chemical composition of the air that we breathe, and bringing in every possible way, with every single bit of knowledge, how it relates to the world around us and how we need to be a part of the solution. And all of this because we know that the cause of world peace and unity is too important to be left to the leaders of the world alone. It needs to be democratized. Every single person on this planet needs to be engaged in that thinking and in that process and in bringing that change. We want our students to grow up into such citizens who will be anxiously concerned about the affairs of the age in which they live, and who want to be, conscious subjects of their own growth, and who want to help to transform the world, who have that desire to transform the world, to be a part of the solution. So I hope that this will help you to, we are very excited about it, and I'm just wanting to share that with you, that's what we are about to do. And your good wishes are needed so that we can be very firm of purpose and take this forward. And you will see the effects of this, because by 2025, if you keep coming to these conferences, which I hope very much that we will see you again, that you will see our students taking leadership in these discussions, in this discourse, in this dialogue. Thank you very much, all participants, for helping us in our resolve. Just your presence here is a great source of inspiration for us, a humble school, to have your accompaniment in thinking about these issues. The deliberations of this conference will be summarized and shared. And by the way, although on this forum we may be only a few people, because we didn't want to give the Zoom link to thousands of people, about 2,500 people have been watching this on YouTube, because it's being live streamed on YouTube. So it is reaching out to a large number of people. So thank you so much for your participation, for your presence, for your thoughts, and for being with us all this time. And it's great to see friends like Justice Odoki, Justice Thomas Aquinas Carmona, Justice Karl Ashok Singh, Ms. Carmen, and Mrs. Saldurkar, Dr. Fernando, Maria Akon Ung, who has been a solid support, like Justice Odoki, like so many of the justices that are here. We had the pleasure of having Justice Hilario Davide Jr. We've had Justice Al-Umar Sharif was here, although he had to leave early from the session. We've had so many old friends who are solid supporters of this conference here today, and it has been an absolute pleasure.
And how can I forget Alan Ware?
Yes, absolutely. An activist of, great influence.
He has become my hero.
And world peace organizations like Heavenly World Peace and Love, the World Peace Prayer Education Society, and many other peace
Opal also is here with you.
Yeah.
Their members are here with us.
Yes, and Professor Chumakov of the Moscow State University, so some academics as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good morning, good afternoon.
Justice Afaq Ali Siddiqui is from where?
He's from our CMS school, from head office.
Okay.
And last but not the least, I would like to thank profusely all the participants and invite all of you for our next conference, that will be online conference, that will be 22nd International Conference of the Chief Justices of the World, scheduled to be held from 19 to 22nd November. So please join that conference, because we have been doing this conference for children, and if you assemble for children, you will get greater heights in your life. Keep joining, and I wish all of you, Justice Odoki, Justice Sadulkar, and especially to her Chief Justice Mandisa Maya. She has been here as a judge, and now she is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Appeal. Mr. Fernando Leoni, the Italian judge Concetta Grillo, she made a debut of Italy, the great country, in our conference with two other judges, one of the judge of the Court of Cassation, Francesco, and the second lady was the Virginia. So it's great honor to have them. And Mr. Mesic, the president of Croatia, who has very humbly accepted our offer to send a video message, and how nicely she has displayed that video, that was praiseworthy. Madam Justice Rosa Maria Akon, she got promoted on 14th July as the judge of the Supreme Court. So this is the blessings of the children of the City Montessori School, that they get greater heights in their life. So keep joining these conferences which we are doing for the children. And Justice B.J. Odoki has been a great support since the start of our conference. We have started our conference in 2001, and he has been the Chief Justice of the Uganda since 2001 to 2013. Justice Karl Ashok Singh, and finally Justice Anthony Thomas Carmona, who has been the head of the state and also judge of the International Criminal Court. And he has given such a wonderful speech that in one speech our mind vaccinated twice. Thank you so much, because he has been a judge and at the head of the state. So we all wish all of you a very nice day ahead, or nice evening ahead, or nice morning ahead, and we will be in touch with you for our next conference. Please get ready and save these dates in your diary. 19 to 22nd November, we will be in touch with you. And I also personally thank the wonderful CMS management, respected Dr. Jagdish Gandhi ji, Dr. Bharti Gandhi ma'am, Mrs. Gita Gandhi ma'am, Roshan Gandhi ji, for their motivation, support and guidance, and enabling us to organize such conference from time to time. I would
May
also
I
like
just
to
say,
thank
Sandeep,
personally
yes, Sandeep, may I
my
just
colleague
thank,
Mr. Sushil Srivastava,
I
Mr.
was going to
Anuruddha
do the
Singh,
thanking.
the
for
entire
that.
member of the World Unity Department, World Unity Education Department, entire CMS family, and more specifically, I would like to convey my gratitude to respected Veera Hajela ma'am and respected Shipra Upadhyay ma'am and Mr. R.K. Singh and his team for his wonderful technical support for making this conference a grand success. If you find some shortcomings during the conduct of this conference, then we sincerely apologize and we promise that we will organize in a more organized way next time. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice
much.
Thank you very much.
Gandhi, thank you very
afternoon
much.
ahead.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Professor. Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. and
Thank
thanks
you,
very much.
ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic work, lads. Keep up the great work.
Stay
Mr.
safe.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, friends.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Sandeep Srivastava.
Bye. Stay safe, everyone.
Okay, all right.
Bye.
Bye, bye.
Justice Carmona, nobody wants to go. That's brilliant.
Fantastic.
And I'm in
Fantastic.
South Africa, lots of solidarity with the problems that you have there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Madam Judge, we understand, of course, it's the matter is sub judice, so you really cannot comment on it, so.
Not at all.
I understand, yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Sam Grillo as well.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Dr.
you for
Gandhi,
coming.
fine. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sandeep.
Hi,
And-
Vietnam.
And you all take very good care of Dr. Gandhi. Take good care of him. You hear me?
Thank you. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Very good point. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, Dr. Fernando.
All right.
John.